Part 1, Chapter 1, The Wound That Has a Name. If you are weak, leave now. This video is not motivation. It is not a pep talk. It is a diagnosis, and diagnoses hurt. If you stay, something in you will never be the same. You wake up tired, not the tired that sleep fixes. The other kind, the kind that lives behind your eyes and sits on your chest before your feet even touch the floor. You lie there for a moment, not dreaming, calculating. Rent, the phone bill, the thing you promise someone and cannot deliver, the number in your account that you already know without checking. You get up anyway. You always get up. That part, at least, you have never failed. But getting up and moving forward, those are two different things. And somewhere, quietly, in a place you rarely visit, you know the difference. You have told yourself the story many times. The economy is broken. The system is rigged. I was not born into the right family. My country gave me nothing. The timing was wrong. Every word of that story feels true. Some of it even is true. But Sun Tzu said something that will either free you or enrage you, depending on how honest you are willing to be with yourself. He said, "The greatest enemy you will ever face stands behind your own eyes, not the market, not your boss, not the government, not your past. You, the version of you that has been running the same patterns, the same excuses, the same quiet surrenders for years. Poverty is not a bank balance. Poverty is a way of thinking that existed long before the empty account. It is a posture, a reflex, a deeply practiced relationship with fear. And the terrifying truth is this: you built it, brick by brick, thought by thought, excuse by excuse. No one wants to hear that. I understand. It is easier to point outward. Outward is comfortable. Outward means you are the victim of something larger than yourself. And victims are not responsible. Victims wait. Victims endure. Victims survive, but they never conquer. Sun Tzu had no patience for victims. Not because he was cruel, because he understood something about war that most people never apply to their own lives. He understood that a soldier who blames the terrain dies on the terrain. Think about the men around you. Same city, same economy, same broken system. Some of them are building something, slowly, imperfectly, with bloody hands, but building. And some are still sitting at that kitchen table, staring at the same bills, telling the same story. What is the difference between those two men? It is not luck. It is not talent. It is not connection or inheritance or timing. It is one thing only. One brutal, simple thing. One man declared war on his own mind. The other man never did. This is chapter 1. This is the wound being named. Because a wound without a name cannot be treated. You have been walking around for years with an infection you called bad luck. Today, we give it its real name. The disease is not poverty. Poverty is only the symptom. The disease is the mind that produces poverty, the mind that flinches, retreats, rationalizes, and then sleeps just well enough to do it all again tomorrow. Sun Tzu spent his entire life studying one question: why do men lose? Not just battles. Why do men lose their nerve, their vision, their will? Why does a soldier with every advantage still find a way to be defeated? His answer was always the same. Always. Defeat begins in the mind. Hours, days, sometimes years before it appears in reality. The broke man was mentally broke long before his account was. The trapped man built his cage thought by thought, long before circumstance locked the door. This is not blame. Blame is useless here. This is anatomy. We are looking at the structure of the problem. Not to punish you, but to understand exactly where the cut must be made. You did not choose this pattern. It was handed to you by a father who feared money, by a mother who apologized for wanting more, by a culture that called ambition dangerous and called suffering noble, by years of watching the people around you shrink and learning, without words, that shrinking was safe. You learned poverty the way you learned language, naturally, silently, completely. And now it runs in the background of every decision you make. Every opportunity that arrives, and the quiet voice that says not for you. Every risk that appears, and the cold hand that pulls you back. Every dream that surfaces, and the immediate, practiced reflex to drown it before it embarrasses you. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is the disease speaking. Sun Tzu called it the general who defeats himself, the commander who, before the first arrow flies, has already surrendered in his mind. He moves his body through the battle. He goes through the motions, but he has already decided the outcome, and so the outcome obeys him. You are that general. You have been commanding a losing army inside your own skull. Chapter 1 ends here with one question, not a comfortable question, a necessary one. If your mind were a battlefield, honestly, clearly, without excuse, who is winning right now? Sit with that. We are not finished. Sit with that. We are not finished. Part 2, the social lie. There is a conversation happening around you every day. You do not hear it as words. You feel it as weight. It lives in the way people look at you, the way they do not look at you, the way a room shifts when certain names are spoken and stays flat when yours is. It is the conversation about who is chosen and who is not, who rises and who remains, who belongs at the table and who eats standing up, outside, in the cold. You have absorbed this conversation your entire life, and somewhere deep in the structure of who you are, you began to agree with it. Not loudly, not consciously. You never sat down and decided, I am less, but the agreement formed anyway, the way ice forms on a window, slowly, silently, until one morning you wake up and cannot see through it. This is the social lie, and it is the second layer of the disease. The social lie is not what the world tells you openly. Open insults are easy to reject. The social lie is subtler. It is the story your environment told you about what people like you, from your background, your family, your neighborhood, your country, are capable of, what they deserve, what is realistic for them. It came dressed as wisdom. Be practical. Know your place. Don't get ahead of yourself. That world is not for us. It sounded like protection. It was a cage with a kind voice. Sun Tzu understood this mechanism perfectly. He wrote about it not in the context of society, but in the context of armies. He observed that the most dangerous thing you can do to an enemy is not attack his body. It is attack his belief in his own victory. Break that belief, quietly, steadily over time, and you never need to raise a sword. The enemy defeats himself. He stands in the field, armed and capable, and simply stops. That is what happened to you, not in one moment, over 1,000 moments. Small ones, forgettable ones, until stopping felt like common sense. Think about the first time you wanted something large, really large, not a new phone, something that required you to see yourself differently, a business, a position, a life that looked nothing like the one you inherited. Do you remember what happened in your body when that want appeared? There was a flicker, brief and real, and then, almost immediately, something else arrived. Something cold and practiced, and the flicker died before it became a flame. That cold thing was not reality. It was the social lie, running its program, on time, efficiently, as it always does. The people who told you to shrink, most of them were not your enemies. That is the hardest part. They were your parents, your friends, your community, people who loved you in the only way they knew how, by preparing you for the smallness they themselves had accepted. They gave you their map. The problem is, their map was drawn in fear. A map drawn in fear will always lead you back to the place that fear knows best. And fear knows poverty. Fear knows stagnation. Fear knows the kitchen table at 4 a.m., the unpaid bills, the practiced silence of a man who has stopped expecting more. Sun Tzu said, "Know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles you will never be defeated." Most people only hear the first part. They spend their lives studying external enemies, the market, the competition, the unfair advantages of others. They become experts in everything outside themselves, while remaining completely blind to what operates inside. The enemy Sun Tzu was most interested in was the invisible one, the general's own fear, dressed as strategy, the soldier's own doubt, dressed as caution, the man's own poverty mindset, dressed as realism. Here is how the social lie maintains its power. It does not argue with you. It does not need to. It simply makes certain thoughts feel embarrassing. Ambition begins to feel like arrogance. Desire begins to feel like greed. Confidence begins to feel like delusion. And so you edit yourself, constantly, automatically, before the world even gets a chance to respond. You pre-reject yourself. You do their work for them. You are so well trained that the cage no longer needs locks. You stay inside it voluntarily and call it being reasonable. I am not asking you to become reckless. Recklessness is not the cure. Sun Tzu was never reckless. Every move he made was calculated, patient, precise. But beneath that patience was a belief, unshakable, non-negotiable, that victory was possible, that he was capable of it, that the outcome was not predetermined by his origin. That belief is what the social lie stole from you. Not your money, not your opportunities, your belief in your own capacity to win. And here is what makes this particularly dangerous. A man without money can still build. History is full of them. Men who started with nothing and constructed something real, not because conditions were perfect, but because their mind refused to accept the verdict their environment had written for them. What separates those men from the ones who stay? It is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is one thing. They saw the social lie for what it was. They named it. They stopped mistaking the cage for the world. This is your moment to do the same. Not tomorrow. Not after conditions improve. Now. In this chapter. In this breath. The social lie is not the truth about you. It is the truth about the fear of the people who raised you, in the circumstances that shaped them. You inherited it the way you inherited your father's coat. It kept you warm once, but it was never made for where you are going. Take it off. Not dramatically. Not with rage. With the quiet, cold precision of a general who has finally identified the source of the enemy's strength. Sun Tzu would not waste energy on anger. He would study the lie, understand its mechanism, and then, calmly, methodically, he would dismantle it. That is exactly what we are about to do. Chapter 2 ends. The lie has been named. Now we bring in the mirror. Part 3. The Ancient Mirror. Sun Tzu was not a philosopher. Do not make that mistake. He was not a man who sat in comfort and wrote beautiful thoughts about the nature of existence. He was a man who had watched other men die because they did not think clearly, because they were controlled by emotion when they needed precision, because they confused movement with progress and noise with power. Everything he wrote was written in the shadow of consequence. Every word cost something. That is why the words still cut 2,500 years later. He wrote, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened." Read that again, slowly, because most people sprint past it looking for tactics. They want the strategy. They want the 5 steps. They want the system. And Sun Tzu is standing there quietly pointing at the mirror, and they walk straight past it. Knowing yourself is not a poetic exercise. In Sun Tzu's world, knowing yourself was a matter of survival. A general who did not understand his own weaknesses would be exploited through them. Every time. Without exception, the enemy does not need to be brilliant. He only needs to find the thing you have not faced in yourself and press on it. Now bring that into your life, into your finances, into your career, into the decisions you make with money, with time, with energy. Where are you being exploited? Not by an external enemy, but by your own unexamined patterns. Where does fear make your decisions before your mind is even consulted? Where does the wound from Chapter 1, the poverty of thought, quietly veto every move you attempt before it begins? Most men cannot answer that question. Not because they are stupid, because looking directly at your own patterns requires a particular kind of courage that has nothing to do with physical bravery. It is harder to sit still with an honest mirror than it is to walk into a burning building. The burning building has an exit. The mirror just shows you. Sun Tzu called this knowing your ground. Before any battle, he insisted on understanding the terrain completely. Every hill, every river, every shadow where an enemy could hide. He applied this same ruthless cartography to the internal landscape of the commander himself. So let us map your terrain, honestly, without mercy, but also without cruelty. When money arrives, what happens? Not what you intend. What actually happens? Does it leave faster than it came? Does it make you uncomfortable, as if you are holding something that does not belong to you? Do you find reasons, surprising, creative, almost elegant reasons, to return to zero? That is not bad luck. That is a map. A map that says, this is the level where I am allowed to exist. Sun Tzu wrote about the soldier who, given a strong position, abandons it without reason, who retreats when no enemy has advanced, who defeats himself in the moment of advantage. He studied this pattern with deep fascination because he understood it was not cowardice in the simple sense. It was something more complex. It was a man acting out a story about himself that was older and stronger than the present reality. You have a story about yourself and money. It was written before you were old enough to edit it, and it has been directing your financial life ever since. Quietly, consistently, with remarkable efficiency. Here is a question that Sun Tzu would ask, not gently, directly. If you had double your current income tomorrow, what would change? And before you answer with the obvious things, the bills, the relief, the breathing room, go deeper. What would you do with the part that remained after survival was handled? If you cannot answer that clearly, if the image blurs, if something in you goes quiet and uncertain, that silence is information. It means your mind has not yet built the internal architecture for more. It means you are still, at the level of identity, a man who manages scarcity, not a man who builds abundance. This is not an insult. This is anatomy. Sun Tzu was never insulting his generals when he exposed their blind spots. He was saving their lives. He was saving their armies. He was giving them the only thing that could change the outcome: clarity about where the real vulnerability lived. Your real vulnerability is not your bank account. It is the image you carry of yourself as someone for whom more is not quite real, not quite deserved, not quite safe. Safety, that word is important. Poverty for many men is not just a condition, it is a hiding place. When you have nothing, no one expects much. When you have nothing, failure is already the baseline. It cannot embarrass you further. When you have nothing, you are protected from the particular terror of having tried fully and still falling short. Sun Tzu would call this defending a position with no strategic value. You are spending enormous energy, all of your daily endurance, all of your quiet suffering, to protect yourself from a risk that only feels larger than it is. You are paying the full cost of poverty to avoid the imagined cost of visible failure. The ancient mirror shows you this, not to shame you, to show you the mathematics of what you have been doing, because once you see the actual trade you have been making, comfort for cost, hiding for suffering, the logic of it collapses. It only works in the dark. In the light of clear examination, it becomes obviously, immediately, unsustainable. A general who finally sees that he has been defending the wrong hill does not weep about the years spent there. He moves, immediately, decisively. He reorients toward what actually matters, and he commits, fully, without looking back. Sun Tzu wrote, "In the midst of chaos there is also opportunity." But he was not talking about external chaos. The deepest chaos in your life right now is internal. It is the war between the man you were trained to be and the man the situation is demanding you become. That war is your opportunity, not later, now. The tension you feel, the pressure, the shame, the quiet rage at a life that does not match what you sense is possible, that is not a sign that you are broken. That is the signal that something in you still refuses to accept the verdict. Sun Tzu trusted that signal above all else. He said the will to win, when it is real and not performed, is itself a strategic asset, more valuable than numbers, more reliable than terrain, because a man who genuinely refuses to lose will find solutions that a comfortable man will never think to look for. You have been told your tension is a problem. It is not. It is a weapon, but only if you stop running from it and start directing it. Chapter 3 ends here. The mirror has been held. You have seen the terrain. Now we build the strategy. Part 4. Strategy of Iron. Strategy without self-knowledge is just noise. You understand that now. The first 3 chapters were not preamble. They were foundation, because a strategy built on an unexamined mind is like a fortress built on sand, impressive from a distance, collapsing from within. Now we build, not with inspiration, with iron. Sun Tzu never spoke about motivation. Read The Art of War completely, and you will not find a single sentence asking soldiers to feel excited about battle. Motivation is weather. It changes, it disappears. It cannot be relied upon when the ground is cold and the enemy is real. What Sun Tzu built his entire philosophy around was something harder and more durable than motivation. He built it around structure, positioning, the deliberate arrangement of conditions so that winning became more likely than losing, not because the soldier felt ready, but because the terrain demanded it. This is the first principle of the strategy of iron. Stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a feeling. Feelings are unreliable. The poor mind waits for confidence before it acts. The strategic mind acts first and allows confidence to arrive as a consequence of action, not a prerequisite for it. Think about every opportunity you have watched pass while you were preparing to feel prepared. Every conversation you did not start. Every risk you did not take. Every door you stood outside of, hand raised, waiting for certainty that never came. That waiting was not patience. Sun Tzu was clear about the difference between patience and paralysis. Patience is stillness with a plan. Paralysis is stillness dressed as caution. The second principle. Sun Tzu wrote, "Opportunities multiply as they are seized." This is not poetry. This is mechanics. The man who acts on one small opportunity develops the muscle of action. He begins to see the next opportunity faster, move toward it with less hesitation, execute with more precision. His world literally expands, not because luck increased, but because his capacity to recognize and respond to possibility grew through use. The man who waits experiences the opposite. Each opportunity ignored makes the next one harder to see. The muscle of action atrophies. The pattern of waiting deepens. And the world, which has not changed, appears to offer less and less. Not because it does, because he is less and less equipped to receive it. This is why the rich appear to get richer and the poor appear to get poorer, and why that observation, taken at face value, feeds the social lie we dismantled in Chapter 2. It is not the money that compounds. It is the behavior. It is the pattern. It is the daily repeated choice to move or to wait, and the identity that choice slowly, permanently constructs. You are not behind because the game is rigged. You are behind because you have been practicing the wrong pattern. With discipline, with consistency, with remarkable dedication, you have been poor with great commitment. And the strategy of iron asks one brutal question. What if you applied that same commitment, that same daily exhausting consistency, to a different pattern? The third principle. Eliminate before you add. Sun Tzu was obsessive about this. Before any campaign, he stripped everything unnecessary from his army. Excess weight, redundant positions, soldiers whose presence created confusion rather than clarity. He understood that a lean, focused force was exponentially more dangerous than a large, distracted one. Your financial life is carrying weight that is killing your momentum. Not just unnecessary expenses, though those exist and you know which ones they are. I am talking about mental weight. The conversations you have with yourself about why things cannot work. The energy spent maintaining the story of your limitations. The daily tax of living inside a narrative that requires constant defense. Strip it, not all at once. That is not how Sun Tzu operated. He was surgical, not explosive. Identify one belief you carry about money or about your own capacity that has never once served you. 1. The oldest one. The one that sounds most like wisdom and has cost you the most. Examine it, not with anger, with the cold, clear eye of a general assessing a position. Ask, is this true? Is it strategically true, meaning, does believing this make me more capable of winning, or less? If the answer is less, then carrying it is not honesty. It is self-sabotage wearing the costume of realism. The fourth principle. Sun Tzu wrote, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." In the context of your mind and your finances, this means this: the highest form of financial strategy is not to out-earn your problems. It is to stop generating them from within. Every financial crisis that originates in impulsive decision-making, in fear-based retreat, in the unconscious need to return to zero, that is an enemy you created, and you are fighting him with enormous effort when you could simply stop producing him. This requires watching yourself in real time, not in reflection, after the damage is done, in the moment. The moment the fear arrives and reaches for the familiar response. The moment the opportunity knocks and the old reflex moves to close the door. That moment, that precise razor-thin moment, is where the strategy of iron lives. Sun Tzu called it the space between stimulus and response. He trained his generals to widen that space, to insert thought where reflex had previously ruled, because in that space lives the only freedom that matters, the freedom to choose a different outcome than the one your pattern has always produced. You cannot change your past patterns by thinking about them. You change them by catching them in motion and choosing differently, once, then again, until the new choice becomes the new pattern, until the new pattern becomes the new identity, until the new identity produces, naturally without strain, a different life. The fifth principle. Position before profit. Sun Tzu never chased the enemy into unfavorable terrain simply because the enemy was there. He waited. He maneuvered. He arranged conditions until the engagement was on ground of his choosing. Then he moved, and moved decisively. Most people chase money directly. They see the number they want, and they run toward it without asking whether they are positioned to hold it, to use it, to build from it. And so money arrives and leaves, as we discussed in the Mirror chapter, because the internal terrain was never prepared to sustain it. Position means this. Before you pursue the next income stream, the next opportunity, the next level, ask honestly, who am I being right now, in my daily decisions, in my relationship with what I already have? Am I the man who can hold more, or am I still the man who will find a way back to familiar ground? Position is built in the small moments, in how you handle the £10 before you pursue the 10,000, in how you think about money when none is moving, in whether you are studying, building, sharpening, or waiting, scrolling, explaining. Sun Tzu said the victorious army wins first, then goes to war. The defeated army goes to war first, then seeks to win. The difference is preparation, internal preparation, the kind that happens in silence before anything external has changed, before anyone is watching. That is where you must live now. In the preparation, in the daily, unglamorous, unwitnessed work of becoming the man whose mind does not produce poverty, not performing that man, being him, in private, in the decisions no one sees, in the moments that will never appear in any highlight reel but will determine everything. Chapter 4 ends. The strategy is in your hands. Now we take one step. Part 5, the ridiculously small step. Everything we have built across 4 chapters, the wound named, the lie exposed, the mirror held, the strategy forged, all of it collapses into dust if it remains inside this video. Ideas that are not converted into action are not wisdom, they are entertainment, and you did not come here to be entertained. Sun Tzu was not interested in men who understood war beautifully. He was interested in men who won. But here is where most content fails you, and I will not fail you here. Most videos, after building you to this peak of clarity and pressure, tell you to take massive action, to overhaul your life, to burn the old patterns completely and rebuild from scratch by Monday morning. That advice has destroyed more genuine momentum than laziness ever has. Because the mind that has lived inside a poverty pattern for years, the mind we have been examining honestly across these chapters, does not transform through explosion. It transforms through repetition. Small, consistent, undramatic repetition. Sun Tzu understood this with surgical precision. He never asked his army to win the war in a single engagement. He asked them to win the next position, just the next one. Secure it completely, then move, then secure the next. Victory was not a single moment. It was a sequence of small, deliberate, well-executed advances that accumulated into something the enemy could not reverse. Your poverty mindset will not be defeated in a single act of will, but it can be weakened today, specifically, practically, in one small move that costs you almost nothing except the decision to make it. This is the ridiculously small step. And the word ridiculously is not accidental. The step must feel almost embarrassingly small, because the poverty mind will resist any step that feels significant. It will find reasons, generate obstacles, manufacture doubt. But a step small enough, a step so modest that resistance cannot justify itself, that step slides past the defense. And then you take it again tomorrow, and the day after, and something begins to shift. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else will notice at first, but in the way that water shifts stone, invisibly, consistently, and then suddenly and completely. Sun Tzu wrote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." He did not write that to be poetic. He wrote it because he had watched generals paralyzed by the distance between where they stood and where they needed to be. The distance is real. Acknowledging it is not weakness, but allowing it to prevent the first step, that is the defeat that precedes all other defeats. So, here is your step. Not mine to choose, yours. But I will give you the framework. Look at the area where the poverty mindset has the strongest grip on you right now. Not the largest problem, the most automatic one. The response that happens before thought. The financial behavior that you have repeated so many times it no longer feels like a choice. Now find the smallest possible interruption to that pattern. Not the solution, not the overhaul. The interruption. The tiniest break in the automatic sequence that proves to your nervous system, not to the world, not to anyone watching, just to your own nervous system, that you are capable of choosing differently. For one man, the ridiculously small step is writing down every purchase for 7 days. Not changing anything, not judging anything, just watching, bringing consciousness to where unconsciousness has ruled. Sun Tzu called this reconnaissance. You cannot defeat an enemy you have never clearly observed. For another man, it is 30 minutes of undistracted learning in an area directly connected to his financial survival. Not scrolling about success, not watching videos about wealth, studying. The specific, uncomfortable, unglamorous kind of studying that builds actual capacity rather than the feeling of growth. For another man, it is one honest conversation he has been avoiding, with himself, in writing, about the exact number, the real number, of his financial position. Not the approximate, not the softened version, the precise, brutal, clarifying truth of where he actually stands. Because Sun Tzu was immovable on this point, you cannot build accurate strategy on inaccurate intelligence. And most men are operating on deliberately blurred intelligence about their own finances because clarity is painful. Clarity is painful for approximately 72 hours. After that, it becomes the most powerful tool you own. Because a man who knows exactly where he stands can plan exactly how to move. A man living in financial blur is fighting in fog, exhausting himself against enemies he cannot see clearly, missing opportunities he cannot recognize. The step is not about money yet. Understand this. The ridiculously small step in the sword and coin philosophy is always about the mind first. Because we have established across every chapter of this video that the account follows the mind. Always, without exception. Fix the account without fixing the mind, and the account returns to where the mind lives. Fix the mind, even partially, even imperfectly, and the account has no choice but to follow. Sun Tzu did not send soldiers to hold territory that the army's mindset could not sustain. He prepared the mindset first. The territory came after, and it stayed because the internal foundation could support it. Now, I want to speak to you directly, not to the viewer. To you specifically, the one who recognized themselves in chapter 1 before the chapter was finished, the one who felt the social lie land in chapter 2 with a weight that was uncomfortably familiar, the one who saw something in the mirror of chapter 3 that they have been carefully avoiding. You are not broken. A broken man does not feel recognition. A broken man does not feel the particular discomfort of truth arriving in a place that has been defended for a long time. That discomfort you are carrying right now, that tightness, that resistance mixed with something that feels almost like relief, that is the sensation of a pattern beginning to crack. Do not waste it. This is the moment Sun Tzu described as the turning point in battle, the precise instant when the momentum is available to shift, when the cost of moving is lower than it will ever be again. These moments do not wait. They do not reschedule. They arrive, they offer themselves briefly, and then they pass, and the pattern closes back over them like water over a stone. Take the step. Today, before this video ends, before the clarity fades into the comfort of familiar routine, before the poverty mind reassembles its defenses and finds 12 reasonable explanations for why tomorrow is better than now. Sun Tzu's final lesson was this. He said the difference between the general who wins and the general who loses is rarely talent, rarely resources, rarely even strategy. It is timing, the willingness to move at the right moment, not the perfect moment, because the perfect moment is a myth. The fearful mind constructs to justify permanent stillness, but the right moment, the moment when you have enough clarity to take the next step, even without certainty about the one after it. This is that moment. You have the clarity, you have named the disease, you have seen the lie, you have held the mirror, you have the strategy. Everything that needed to be in place before the step, it is in place. The only thing remaining is the decision. And decisions, unlike conditions, unlike circumstances, unlike the economy or the system or the inheritance you did or did not receive, decisions belong entirely to you. They always have. That was never taken from you, no matter what the social lie suggested. You are not your father's fear. You are not your neighborhood ceiling. You are not the story your environment wrote about what people like you are capable of. You are the general, and the general decides. Sun Tzu built armies out of men who had lost before, men who carried the memory of defeat in their bodies, men who had every reason, by the evidence of their past, to believe that losing was their nature. He did not ask them to forget what they had lost. He asked them to pick up the blade again, with full knowledge of the cost, with clear eyes about the terrain, with honest understanding of the enemy, and move forward anyway. That is all this is. Pick up the blade, one step. Today, the disease of poverty is real, and the cure is not wealth. The cure is the decision, made in private, made without applause, made in the exact moment when every comfortable pattern in you argues against it, to think differently, once, and then again, until the mind that produces poverty is replaced, thought by thought, decision by decision, step by step, by the mind that produces something else entirely. Closing CTA. This video ends here, but your chapter does not. What is your ridiculously small step today? Not tomorrow, not when conditions improve. Today, write it below. One sentence. Make it embarrassingly small. Make it specific. Make it yours. The comment section is not for inspiration. It is for declaration, and declarations, unlike intentions, have weight. Sun Tzu is watching. More importantly, you are watching. Now move.